Hey everyone, if this is your first talk with us, then welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. And for those of you that have already been tuning in, welcome back. We hope you will or have been enjoying what's going on, and we just want to take the opportunity to say thanks to all the sponsors and partners. And if you're not already signed up, don't forget to check out the Slack channel for lots more product marketing resources and discussion. Enjoy the talk.
Your customers are your best spokespeople, so you want to make sure your prospects hear what they have to say. After all, trusted endorsements can drive faster sales cycles and boost marketing conversions, which helps you unlock faster growth. But when it comes to going on the record, even your best customers can go silent, and who can blame them? Partnering on case studies is time-consuming, and it's painful to work through the legal approvals often required. Luckily, there's another way. With Tech Validate by SurveyMonkey, you can easily capture feedback from satisfied customers and transform it into powerful content, like verified case studies, testimonials, and reviews. Want charts that show ROI, cost savings, or competitive differentiation? You got it. With our platform, you'll quickly build an arsenal of highly targeted social proof points, segmented by industry, company size, or buyer persona. You'll get the tools to easily deploy your new customer evidence into top marketing channels and put it in front of your sales team to share with prospects. Plus, there's no need to wait for legal for approvals. With Tech Validate, your customers can opt to share their name or provide testimonials anonymously, with all customer evidence validated by a trusted third party. That's why hundreds of companies, big and small, use Tech Validate to get social proof at scale. Ready to see how it works? Watch our product tour today.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Christian Ayer and I'm a product marketing lead at Amazon Web Services. So today I'm really excited to talk to you about the customer journey. It's something that I've got to work with over the past few years, and it's really made a big difference in the customer experience that we deliver for our customers. And so what I'd like you to walk away with today is what it's actually like to be a customer for your company and what it's like to walk in their shoes. So we're going to get started. I have two screens here, so if I'm going back and forth, that is what I'm doing. So, okay, there we go. So just before I begin, you're probably wondering who I am. As I mentioned, my name is Krisha, and I've been in the marketing industry for about 12 years. I really enjoy bringing new ideas to life. So one of my biggest passions is working with mergers and acquisitions. I really enjoy taking new technologies that we acquire that are cutting edge and getting to actually embed them into companies, into their strategies, and working really cross-functionally across the business to make sure we can take that new technology and take it to market. So product launches is a big area of focus because of that. And I've worked mostly in the B2B space, but most of this content will work both for B2B and B2C as well. And just in regards to product marketing, I think one of the beauties of product marketing is that we get to work cross-functionally. And I think it's imperative that we work cross-functionally across the organization so that we can make sure that our business gets the most holistic strategy and approach from product marketing as possible. That's a little bit about me, and I'm going to get started on actually talking about what we're going to cover today. So I'd like to start setting the stage by talking about the importance of the customer experience. And then we're going to go into a few ways that we can keep the customer front and center. Then we're going to talk about what the customer journey actually is and how to roll it out to your organization. And then we're going to close up with a few ways to measure success. Okay. So I really want to talk about the customer experience first, because I think it's important to take a step back and think about what it would be like to be a customer for your company. So as if I was to ask each of you, what would your customers say about your company today? What would they say you're doing well? And what would they say you're not doing so well? So I love this quote by Steve Jobs. You have to start with the customer experience and work back towards the technology, not the other way around. And I think that we all can sometimes make this mistake. It really needs to start with the customer benefits first and where we can take the customer, not, let's sit down with the engineering team and figure out what really cool technology we can come up with and then build it and figure out how we're going to take it to market. So we really need to start with the customer first. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out how to sell it. So what makes a customer experience go from good to extraordinary? I'm sure we've all had our fair share of bad experiences. I had one last week where I was trying for 3 days just to get my internet set up, and it was frustrating. But I'm sure we also have had a few times where we've had a really good experience. And so I think we all want to make sure that our customer experiences are more of those. So I want to give you an example of a good customer experience that I've heard recently. A friend of mine was actually doing some online shopping, and they're based in Vancouver, and they were shopping at a US-based company called Revolve. And Revolve had shipped their item, and it said the tracking date was going to be, I think, March or May 19th. So during COVID, actually. So May 19th, 8 p.m. So she goes to check her order, and she doesn't receive it that day. So she goes to check UPS and see what the tracking status is, and there's an error on that tracking item. So she calls UPS, can't get through. Everyone, I'm sure, is calling UPS right now, and the hold time is about an hour. So she calls back a few more times, can't get through. So then she decides to contact Revolve because she couldn't get through to UPS, and she thought Revolve might have an answer for her. And she was kind of concerned because of that error message. So she contacts Revolve, and the agent is able to resolve her inquiry within the same day. So she has an email exchange with an agent, and the agent actually apologizes for the experience, even though it wasn't their fault, and actually offers to give 15% back to the customer. And so my friend was very pleased and surprised because that was not what she was expecting at all. She wasn't asking for any money back. All she was asking for was an update on the status of the package. So that's a really good example of how you're able to surprise your customer and delight them in a way that they weren't expecting, and give them more value than they actually had come to you for. And if you actually look at it, it's a really good example because during this situation of COVID, companies can act in very various ways, and it's really important to maintain the integrity of your brand so your customers continue to come back. And in this situation, it was actually not Revolve's fault that the package hadn't arrived. It was actually UPS's issues with what's going on in the world. And Revolve was able to actually take that opportunity and give a really great customer experience and ensure that their customers knew that they were valued. So that's a really important piece that I want to point out here. And based on that, I want each of you to think about, when was the last time you had a good customer experience? So let's talk about, what is a good customer experience? And when you think about what your best customer experience is, it probably has one of these few elements that I'm going to talk through. So the first is that the customer always receives value. So they get what they expect, even though their expectations may be off. So what does that mean? So what that means is the customer got what they expected, even if their expectations weren't right. So if you think about it, sometimes, as organizations, we hide behind that excuse of, we did what we were supposed to do, we delivered what we were supposed to deliver. But the question really here is, if there's a disconnect, what did that customer expect? And if you can't meet that customer's expectations, the only other option you have is to educate them. And you need to bring into alignment their expectations and the brand value proposition of your company. Because the customer at the end of the day, if they don't receive value, bets are off. They're not going to continue to shop with your organization. So the second thing that happens is that the customer is pleasantly surprised. So in the example that I gave you, my friend was not expecting 15% back, was just expecting an update on that order, and she got it delivered the next week. So you want to try and surprise as many customers as you possibly can during that customer experience, because that's what's going to make you stand out. And one of the beauties of product marketing is that we work across the business. So we work with, organizations like sales, customer support, and product. So we should be looking for these types of opportunities all the time. And the third piece here on how to deliver a good customer experience is effectively managing the customer's emotional connection to your brand. So did your customers leave happier than when they started? And if they did, they're going to tell others that that is the reason they shopped with you. That is the lifeblood of your brand. And if they had a bad experience, they're still going to go tell people. They're going to tell people they had a terrible experience, there's no service, it's a bad product. So when they have a good experience, they tell their friends, you have to go there. That's the difference. So you want to make sure you give your customers a story. At the end of the day, people love to tell stories. On the weekends, friends, family sit around and tell stories. So what story are you giving your customers to talk about? Okay, so how do we get there? So this is where it goes into the customer journey. So the customer journey, I'm sure most of you have heard about it and probably to different levels, but I'm going to just try and level set here. The customer journey is the experience that a persona has with a brand or a business. So their actual journey doesn't start when they contact you or you connect with them. It's really the first time they maybe met you in person at a conference, they interacted with your website, or they may have interacted with a piece of content that your organization has delivered. And so they are going to choose to purchase with you based on this customer journey. And there are many variations of this customer journey. And this is one that I like to refer to because I think this visual does a good job of showing the different touch points that a customer can go through potentially at each different stage of this journey. And there's physical touch points and there's digital touch points and there's, there can be a bit of both. So it's important to take note of that. So here I've actually renamed the customer journey as the revenue journey, because the first half of that journey, awareness, consideration, and acquisition, is really the buyer's journey. And the second half of that is the customer's journey. So the engagement and advocacy is post-sale. So what makes the difference between the buyer journey and the customer journey is that point of purchase. So the left half is the pre-sale, and then the right half is post-sale. So when you combine all of this together, this is the revenue journey. I'm sure there's many names for it, but for this purposes, let's continue to use that name. And just to give a good understanding as to what the customer and buyer journey really is and what that makes up it, I've included a really simple example here. So Bill in this example in all these little boxes is a customer. And let's say that Bill is experiencing problems with his car. So in that first box of awareness, we have Bill's express symptoms of a problem or an opportunity. So this is when the persona really realizes that they have a problem that they want to solve or an opportunity that they want to explore. But what's really key during this phase is that they're looking for vendor neutral information to try and get more information about their problem or opportunity. So at this point, they're not even aware of brands. They may be aware, but really they're looking just for information. Then you move on to consideration. And I actually like to break consideration into two parts. So consideration and considering us. So consideration is the information gathering and research phase that the customer goes through. So Bill in this situation, he is having problems with his car and he's probably trying to understand, what's going on with his car. Let's say, it's his transmission and maybe he doesn't want to pay for his transmission to get fixed. So he's looking at brand new cars. So right now he's just trying to understand and get a deeper knowledge on the possible vendors of interest so that he can make a decision on what types of options he has. And then when considering us comes into play, the second part of consideration, this is when potentially your prospect can enter the sales cycle because they've discovered your brand. Now, Bill would be evaluating different vendors to purchase his car. So potentially he could be looking at, Toyota, he could be looking at Tesla, he could be looking at Mercedes. Depending on his price points, he's probably looking at these different options. And so during this phase, he's going to eventually move into acquisition. So acquisition is when the persona starts completing the sales cycle. So they actually have decided on their solution or strategy to solve their problem. So let's say, for example, Bill's decided he wants to buy a Tesla. It's very eco-friendly, it fits his budget and his lifestyle. So he's decided on this. So he would have moved into the bottom of the funnel and become a close one or sales one opportunity. Now Bill has become a customer, right? So after that purchase point, he's become a customer and he moves into the engagement phase, which is when the persona starts evaluating the solution to see if it actually really does fit their needs. When they decide whether it fits their needs or not, they can move into advocacy. Advocacy is what we're all aiming for here. And this is when the persona has decided that they have enough value from your solution and they begin to start sharing this with friends and family. So that's hopefully a really good overview of the revenue journey. But I want to take it one level deeper now that you are aware of what the journey looks like. And so we mentioned a little bit about the sales cycle. So when you dig into this a little bit deeper, I've mapped out the buyer journey, the customer journey. You know, there's marketing touch points that happen, usually more top of funnel, awareness and consideration. And as you can see here, marketing usually starts slowing down during the end of consideration, the later stages of that phase, and around acquisition, because during this time, we don't want to interrupt the sales cycle and the sales conversations that our sales team is having with the customer. We want to make sure that we're only complementing and supporting them. So that's why you'll see that kind of starts trickling off and kind of comes up again after acquisition. But when you look at the sales process, the first half is the sales process and the second half is the customer success process. And this may vary based on your organization, but let's just kind of go with this model for now, and you can probably adjust based on the way that your organization is set up. So we would start with discovery, which would be mapped to awareness. And then qualification would move from qualification through all the stages to proposal. And then during acquisition in the sales process, this is when procuring would happen. And then once the customer has become a customer, implementation obviously happens. And then there's monitoring during advocacy to see how happy the customer is. So hopefully that helps get a good understanding of the revenue journey. So now let's get into content. So what types of content should you be creating for each stage of the journey? So let's start with the buyer journey first, and we're going to start with awareness because that's the top of the funnel. So we know that this is when the persona has a problem and they're trying to solve their problem, or they found an opportunity they want to explore. So what types of content is going to help your persona become aware of your company? So things like SEO is a really good one. You'll have your BDRs doing outreach potentially on some lists that they may have. You may want to have e-guides and e-books. And note here that we had mentioned that customers are vendor neutral at this point. So you may not want to push your product. You may just want to help educate them on a problem here, which is really useful because it'll actually build more trust in the big picture. Infographics, blog posts, social shares. These are some examples of content that's really useful in awareness. So I have a list here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just kind of take note of what's important in each phase. And then we go into consideration. And as I mentioned previously, I typically break this out into consideration and then considering us. So whoever, your own brand. So consideration, the first half is how can you encourage people from other sites to link or mention or engage with you. So some of this is similar. So it's SEO. There could be expert or influencer guides that you create, webinars, podcasts as well are a really good one. Vendor white papers. So you could potentially do a comparison between vendors. So your prospect starts learning about you. And then we move into considering us. So this is when the customer or prospect starts becoming aware of your brand. So they'll want to know what content will convince your persona to actually make potentially a purchase or consider following down the path of your brand. So things like case studies, they may want to see some validation, product literature, they may want to see which features that you have. They may look at reviews. These are super important to make sure that they can see from their peers in their network whether this is the right solution for them. And a lot of enterprises also look at analyst reports as well. And then we go into acquisition. So this is what content will encourage that action. So these are things like what to expect, implementation guides, guidelines for success, what your promise is to the customer from an executive, and promotional emails. So this is a little bit lighter because, as I mentioned, we don't want to really impact the sales cycle at this point. So as you can see, awareness is probably the largest bucket, and then it trickles down to acquisition. Okay, so now we can move on to the customer journey, so post-sale. So we have engagement and advocacy, and during these two phases, let's focus on engagement first. What content will reinforce the decision to purchase your solution? So when prospects become a customer, they're going to engage in things like community forums, trying to understand, your product, how features work. They're going to look at news as to what's going on with that business that they've now engaged with and have a partnership with. They'll want to know about product updates, roadmap webinars. They'll want to keep up to date with blog posts. So these are some examples of engagement. And then advocacy is what content will encourage them to tell others. So again, there may be roadmap webinars they may find are useful. They want to share that with their networks, their coworkers, their friends in the same industry. Blog posts they may share. They may engage in surveys or user-generated content to see how people are actually using it. And I included here customer advisory boards because when you become an advocate for a brand, ultimately you want someone to be on your advisory board to be regularly giving feedback back to you and your organization. Okay, so I thought this quote was a stat was really interesting. So 65% of marketers still don't understand what types of content are effective. And this is from the Content Marketing Institute. So why I found this interesting was that your business cannot afford to have gaps in the customer journey. Otherwise, potential customers will have no choice but potentially may actually leave the decision process to choose your company because they may find solutions to their challenges somewhere else. So let's assume that you've started your own content strategy and you have plenty of traffic coming to your website, but you have fewer leads and you can't seem to close these. So this is a really common struggle that businesses and their sales team have. So usually what's happening is there's a misalignment between the available content and the customer's journey. So properly mapping the content to your customers directly impact the success of your customer marketing campaign. So now we're going to get into how do you actually put this into practice so that you don't have that issue. So the first concept you should think about is how you actually map your personas. So hopefully you already have personas for each of your solutions and services, but it's important to really write this down and have this documented so that you have alignment across your organization as to which personas you're going to be focusing on. So you want to think about decision makers and influencers and what their buying triggers are, their challenges and their pain points are, and what they're actually looking for in a solution. So if you have multiple products, you may want to break this down and separate them. But if there's overlap, you may want to keep it together. Depends on the way that your business is structured. And the second piece here is really important. So this is the content audit. This takes the most time. So what you're going to do here is you're going to do a content audit on what you have available today so you can understand where the gaps are in your content map. And then third is an action plan. So based on the content audit, you'll be able to see, where are there gaps in your customer journey and where do you need to start plugging in important information? Or if you have information, is it the right information that you want to refresh or replace? Because updating content is important as well. So here you're going to be reviewing the different stages of the journey and what content needs to be built in order to get a really strong customer experience. So let's start with step one. So this is mapping out personas. I've kind of put together a little bit of a template I've started for you. So what this is articulating is you want to list 1 to 3 influencers for each stage and 1 to 3 decision makers for each stage. And this shouldn't be very different. There's probably going to be a few nuances between each stage. So for example, here we have a VP of sales and a CRO and a director of sales enablement seem to be the key decision makers for the solution that we're talking about. And the influencers are sales managers and director of sales operations. But as you'll notice in the consideration, I've added in a security manager in consideration. So for example, if you have a technology that you are selling, there may be security processes that need to happen later on in the sales cycle to ensure that this technology can be used by your organization. So you want to make sure that that security manager has peace of mind and you have content built out to actually provide to them. So really pay attention here on how you can address your persona's pain points and how you can offer guidance to solve these. And also remember that you don't need to plug your product at every point of the journey. It's really important here. I think we can all appreciate, I think I mentioned this already, but when you're in search of a solution, you just want education. You don't want to be sold a product. So make sure that you have a nice balance of this throughout the journey as well. And then step 2 is doing an actual content audit. So this is a little template that I've used in the past, and this will probably vary based on your organization and how it's set up. But this is really just to start getting you get you started and start thinking about how you would set this up. So I look at each stage. So we have awareness here, and I repeat this for every stage. And at the top, across the top, we have use case or product. You may want to break this down by product, or maybe you have different sales plays or use cases that are very different. And then down the left there, we have the types of customers. So maybe online customers, we may have mid-sized commercial customers or large enterprise. So you may only have one segment or you may have all three. So make sure you're taking that into account. And then you just go ahead and list up all the content that you have for each section. Anything I missed here? So I think that that's pretty much it. Really make sure that you're tailoring this also to the sales cycle. So you want to make sure that it's meeting the needs of your sales team and that your sales has enough content as well, not just the marketing organization. Okay, and so step 3 is your action plan. So this is kind of fun, a good exercise to go to after you have everything mapped out for each stage. You're going to start to see where there's gaps and where there's a lot of content. So you may actually want to go refresh existing content. You may want to go create new content. So as you start uncovering that, then you can start putting that towards your action plan. So you want to have a team that you work with to start brainstorming what content is going to be useful and have the most ROI to deliver to your customers and for your organization as well. So here we have the journey stage is the first column. Then I like to include the sales stage because consideration can be from S1 to S4 depending on the way that your organization builds your sales process. The name of the content, what type of content it is. Was it a video, a blog, an infographic? It's important to have an array of different content types to keep your audience interested. You want to include key owners, due dates, and the status to make sure that you're on track. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how do you organizationally roll this out. So there's 4 key things that I'd like you to think about. So the first is building a tiger team. I love to build tiger teams on projects like this because these are the people that are going to help you actually get things done. So they're the people that are going to help you build and execute and deliver and make sure that it's actually monitored as you've implemented, right, the content. So you may have stakeholders from the brand team, the marketing team. You may have someone from sales, or maybe you need someone from demand gen, but you're going to map out the personas with them. You're going to look at the existing content that we discussed, and you're going to be identifying content gaps with them. And then the second piece is very important. So having executive sponsorship. This is what's going to make the difference between your project living and dying. So you want to make sure that this executive team is educated on why this project is important. because when you have their buy-in, they can continue to make sure that there is accountability for the Tiger team, for all the teams involved, and for the organization to continue to measure the improvement in customer experience, the improvement in business growth, and revenue. So this group can really help be advocates across organization when new programs and content become available. So for example, if you have a sales leader who's bought into your program, they can help advocate when there's new content available that their sales team is going to use it. So this group can also support with budget as well, so super important, or if an agency is needed. So there may be budget that's required for an agency to help build out this content if there's a lot of it. And then customer success is very important to keep involved here as well, because they are the other half of the journey. So yeah, making sure that, even your CEO, they should be involved, head of product, customer support, sales, as I mentioned, success, as I mentioned. So making sure they're all aligned. And then the third piece here is running a workshop to the executive team and the Tiger team to make sure that you're all aligned on what the actual customer journey is. So you're speaking the same language and they don't have different expectations than the ones you do for your Tiger team. You want to talk about what the actual, what it looks like today. So what is the current status and the clear next steps and action plan that you want to get to and the goals that are aligned to that. So you want to make sure that you have enough resources and budget to actually move forward with this. And then the last piece is beating the drum. So don't let that workshop be the last time that your organization hears about this or your executive team hears about this. You want to continually keep giving updates to your team, your executive team, and the organization to make sure you're continuing to beat that drum. That's what's gonna help keep your project living and keep everyone engaged and excited to keep delivering this content and making sure the customer experience is front and center. Okay, and lastly, now we're gonna measure success. So this is a really interesting piece because you wanna make sure you're sharing the successes and the challenges that you have with your organization so they can either support you in making sure that you can go from yellow to green, and then also making sure that you're sharing success, that these things are actually working. So the first way to measure success is during the early stage. So I'm going to break this down into the early stage of the customer journey, revenue journey, the mid stage, and the late stage. So the beginning of the customer journey consists of a prospect becoming aware of their need for your product or service. So as well as learning about your industry and brand. So awareness of your brand may come from a customer recognizing their own need, or it may come during the research part of fulfilling their need. So the beginning of the customer journey can be kind of challenging to track versus the later stages because your customer may not remember exactly when they came across your brand. So it may be challenging to track that individual data from start to finish. So you may need to be a little bit creative here, but I've given you a starting point. I've included here opens, views, clicks, and traffic. So these are all measurement steps in the digital journey, and they're easier to track. So open rate refers to how many prospects open your emails. Views are the number of users who saw your post. Click-through rates refers to how many users actually click a link and follow through to your website. And then lastly, tracking the source of your traffic is very critical. So many businesses use tools like Google Analytics, A/B testing, or analytics that come through Facebook or Google Ads to gain insight about their audience and how effective their strategies are. And then you would refine touch points accordingly. Okay, so we're going to move on to the mid stage. So the mid stage is the second part of the customer journey, and this includes the decision making, purchase, and delivery. So here we have bounce rate, pages per session, visits, website heat maps, conversions, time to convert, and abandonment rate. So I'll talk about these each a little more in depth. So once a customer lands on your website, they may be ready to enter the purchasing stage of their journey, or they may be still doing research. So they may have actually landed there by mistake, which you'll be able to tell by the metrics time on the page or the bounce rate, or if they don't find what they're looking for. So bounce rate is the number of users who leave after viewing just one page. And pages per session measures the number of pages a visitor views before leaving. And so these metrics can tell you whether your users interacted with your brand on your site. And the more pages viewed is obviously the better, so the more interaction is better. And then we go on to visits. So I think I already mentioned a little bit about this, but this refers to the number of times a single user visits your site. And obviously, the more times they visit your site, the more likely they are to buy. Then we have session recording. I didn't list this here, but many companies invest in software that records video of users interacting with their site. And this helps manage what may cause high bounce rates or low pages per session. So therefore, a lack of return visits. And then conversion. So this is the number of prospects who actually make a purchase or perform an activity on your page. So this could mean the amount of people that complete a purchase via e-commerce potentially. And this could also include the number of people that came to your store who made a purchase, completed a transaction as well. And then, and you can also include their, phone in store as well during that conversion phase. Then we have time to launch, and this is a very helpful KPI because that measures how long it takes a prospect to convert. And then we have abandonment rate. So this is when you have the cart abandonment. It can alert you when there's problems with the customer experience on your e-commerce site. So this will help you prevent issues in the future if you monitor this, if there's any issues you're able to catch. So this may include pricing surprises. This may include lack of trust in your brand due to the website security. So there's a various amount of reasons that they could be abandoning your site. Okay, and the last stage here is the late stage. So this is the later stages of the customer journey. So it's everything that happens after the customer makes a purchase of your product. So it can include things like satisfaction, it can include customer loyalty and positive reviews of your brand. So I've included here three or four. So we have support rate. So what percentage of your customers require support? And you want to look at here trends as to the types of support requests that they are needing for your support. So is there trends that you should be paying attention to that all new customers may be having? So you can learn a lot here to improve the product itself, the delivery, customer experience, the website. So lots of interesting anecdotes there. And then we have Net Promoter Score, so also NPS. And this is the question of how likely the customer is to recommend your brand or to someone else. So this could range from a really enthusiastic prospect to a very passive customer to someone who's very unhappy. And then we have lastly upsell and cross-sell rate. So this percentage shows you how many customers upgrade or continue to make purchases. So this metric can help you learn how much trust and satisfaction that your customers have with the company. And that is all. So that closes up our session for today. I hope that each of you had a really good time learning about the customer journey. I hope that you learned something new. And I'd love for each of you to take some time to reflect on three things. So the first is, what's your best customer experience? And the second is, what are some ways that you can try and surprise and delight your customers? And the third is, what would you change about the customer experience that you deliver today? So that is all. Thank you again for listening, and I hope all of your families are safe during this crazy time. Thanks.